So let me welcome you again to leadership change that's personal, practical, and measurable. We are thrilled to have you here for this conversation about how Pulse and the Leadership Circle profile create real transformation inside our own teams and in leaders around the world. Today, we'll look at how to make leadership growth measurable using the Leadership Circle tools to create accountability and to create inspiration for both leaders and teams. Leading this conversation is Carolina Páez. Carolina is a master certified coach and senior consultant who has nearly 3 decades of experience working with senior leaders around the world. She partners with CEOs and executive teams to strengthen leadership impact, align culture with strategy, and navigate complexity with clarity, and more importantly, with heart. Known for her rare blend of strategic rigor and genuine warmth, Carolina creates space for honest dialogue and courageous growth in leaders. She currently leads Leadership Circle teams across EMEA and Latin America and is an integral member of the Leadership Circle Global faculty. It is my pleasure to welcome Carolina Páez. Hi, Carol. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, Sarah. Thank you, everybody, for being here and accepting this invitation.
Well, I will hand it over to you. The stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everybody. I was reading your introductions in the chat. It's great to have here coaches, practitioners from Leadership Circle, leaders, people from organizational world, like working in human resources, and all of this mix of interesting audience we have here. So I'm going to share my presentation on my screen. You will have a summary after this session, so don't worry about that. And I will be alternating between sharing my screen and just having the conversation with all of you, if that is okay. And of course, thank you, Leadership Circle team, because you're going to help me to gather questions. And if something needs to just be said in that moment, please interrupt me, because I'm happy to talk with all of you. So this slide is just to create a case about leadership, but I don't think we need to spend too much time on this one. And something that we are just looking forward in these days is to have a very elevated leadership that can support the changes and the complexity of the world we're living in, right? So we are living in a world that is in the middle of unpredictable and fast changing situations all over the place, right? And we want to see, even in our countries, in our geographies, we want to see leaders that are inspiring, that foster innovation, and that achieve amazing results, right? And we are all here knowing that we need to unlock potential, not only outside of ourselves, but also inside of ourselves. We need to unlock potential because in order to meet this complexity, that's something that is important, right? So if this is the first time knowing us, we are Leadership Circle. We're a company that's been here for more than 20 years working in research and supporting leaders with developing leadership tools, right? And we are here to support change in all the ways possible. We have 2 books. Just want to say that I'm going to stop my sharing because some people love to study. One is Mastering Leadership. This is our first book, amazing book. If you want to understand more about Leadership Circle, all the research, all the history is here. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because you didn't came for that. And the second book, that is Scaling Leadership, I'm going to mention those books because they're amazing. There's tons of research. If you are like somebody that loves to study leadership development, those are your books, right? So just wanted to bring a little context about our company. Of course, we have products, we have services, we have consulting, and we do tons of research. We have the biggest database on leadership in the world, and I am very proud to be part also of this company. So if you listen my passion, it's a real passion for leadership development. Okay, so this is us, and we not only have tools and products, we have a framework that we call the universal model of leadership. And we really believe, and what makes us special is that we believe that inner beliefs drive our competencies, our behaviors, right? And something that we measure in all of our tools is how these inner beliefs are connected with behaviors and competencies, right? So many frameworks dive deep into competencies, but we believe what makes our approach very special is all the inner work and how we are linking all of this with more than 50 years of leadership development theories. And one of the basic frameworks is stages of development, the stages of development of awareness, leadership, and consciousness, right? So that's something that makes our approach very special. And we are always researching, understanding, measuring what make a leader effective, right? And we believe all of these competencies and inner beliefs focus on the right intention and way, create leadership effectiveness that lasts long, right? So our dream is to support leaders to lead with deeper purpose, because when we lead with deeper purpose, we attract people, and people is gonna be follow us, and we need to be followed, because when I talk with leaders, everybody's like, Carolina, what I am going to do in this company is huge. How in the earth one human being can do all of that, right? So we need to cultivate connection, because in the past we believe that leaders like achieve results because of their own skills. But now we know that leaders need tons of people following them in order to cultivate this connection that inspire and achieve the results that really matters, right? So we need to grow in ways that sustain and multiply. And today, let me stop my sharing. We're gonna share different things. I brought a case. I brought my own leadership development journey that I am going to share very openly with all of you. And of course, we're going to be here to support your understanding of how we really can commit with organizations and leaders to support the change, which is something that I've been asked as a coach. I remember when I am an industrial engineer, and when I started to work in my own practice as a coach, everybody was like, okay, how I can know what is happening closed door, like in those sessions, what are you going to give me after that? And in those times I was like, no, I can invite you to some sessions with the leader that I am going to work with. We can have a starting meeting, we have a final meeting, we can measure some things, we can do some interviews. I remember doing interviews to the ecosystem of the leader, but it was a lot of work. And at the end, the company didn't have something in their hands, like saying, okay, what happened with this leader, right? And I'm very passionate about Pulse, because now I have something that I can give to the organizations, to my clients, and they are more like present and participating more in the development of the leader. And that's something that Pulse is something that is new in the way we're teaching today. This was part of one of our big approaches to systemic development, that was the system certification. But it was about 2 years ago when we decided, anybody that is doing a leadership circle profile, that is one of our stellar instruments that measures leadership effectiveness, creative competencies, reactive tendencies that are connected to inner beliefs and behaviors, should have the way to measure progress in time. And that's the reason we wanted to share with you, hey, what are the options you have? What are the possibilities? What is new? And it's something that is being around, like in this way I'm teaching you just in this moment. Like about 2 years ago, we started to bring Pulse like in the way that I'm going to teach you today, right? So something that we want to bring to you today is that what we have learned is that true leadership growth doesn't happen by accident. It requires tons of intention, attention, energy, time, right? And of course, this absolutely connected with awareness, reflection, and accountability. Something that is super important when we're learning something, because we are, as an adults, we need to learn so many things, is we need to track development, because tracking development ensures progress. right? It doesn't happen by chance, right? And the accountability, that is the other part, is like, imagine like two pillars here. One is the tracking of development, and the other is accountability. Accountability creates a structure for all of us. If I think about the changes that I have like work in my life, when I share what I am doing, when I share with my family, hey, I'm going to have these times to go to sleep because I want to rest more, because I am committed to this, it creates accountability. And when we include the system, something different happens. So when we are having a one-on-one coaching session, and our client is saying, I am going to listen my team, I'm going to be more open to new ideas, to innovation. It doesn't happen just saying, I want to change this. It requires not only the coaching sessions, but it also requires the support of the system and the accountability of the leader saying to the team, hey, I really want to change this, because there is a lot of vulnerability, and with vulnerability, there is a lot of growth, right? So let me share my screen a little bit more around this thing that I'm sharing. And of course, when growth is measured and supported, leaders can see how intention turns into impact. And at the end, everybody is winning when we are changing. I am the owner of my impact, but I am also supporting my system to receive who I am and how I'm changing. We have something that we share in our certifications. Is like, what people think about us is already out there. They already think something. My responsibility as a leader is to gather that information. It's better for me, and I always recommend this to leaders. It's better to know. It's better to know what people is thinking about you. It's better to know what is the impact, because you can have a good intention, but not a great impact. And you are responsible for both of them, right? So let me bring some, like, the case. I'm still building the case here of why this matters. And something is visibility. So without tracking, growth remains invisible. Who needs to see that you are changing? You and the system, both of you. You need to know that you're improving. It's good for you to know that you're improving. Sometimes when we're doing coaching sessions, like closed door coaching sessions, we ask the leader, hey, how is it going? Tell me a little bit what's been happening in these weeks we haven't been like in contact. And they're like, I think I'm doing well, but I don't know, because I don't know. I don't have the way to track if people is receiving my good intentions of change in the way that I am planning, right? So that's an important thing, visibility. The other important thing is consistency. Why consistencies? Because regular feedback builds habits of reflection and conscious action. And I'm gonna share my own journey. And I've been working on Pulse this year. And the fact that I receive regular feedback helps me a lot. It's like, am I doing what I commit to or not? Right? And the other important thing is alignment. Alignment is because leaders stay focused on what truly drives effectiveness and culture. And the last thing, which is not minor, is trust. Why trust? Because transparent accountability fosters credibility and engagement across teams. So, what does it actually looks like to track your leadership growth in a way that is visible and meaningful? And it's very simple. I remember, let me share a story before sharing about Pulse. I remember that I used to say to my coaches, okay, this is gonna be the topic we're gonna work on your development. But before the starting, why don't you have 5 conversations with people that really matters to you? And you ask people around you to give you feedback about this goal. Do you think this is something I should invest 1 year of coaching or 6 months of coaching process or not? What do you think about this? And I remember doing an interview, and I remember then sending me the notes and me doing Excel pages, trying to at the end have something to share with my client. Okay, at the end, this is what we have. Of course, including human resources team, including the leader, but it was all manual. It was a lot of work for me in those times. And knowing that I have something now, that I don't have to do anything different, that introduce a goal and some behaviors, and I am going to have a 1 year process of tracking and follow up, makes a huge difference for me. So let me share what is that, because that is called Pulse. So some of you knows that we have an instrument, and I said our stellar instrument because it was the first one that was developed by Bob Anderson. And of course, some of you know that we have a leadership circle profile. That is an assessment that measures leadership development, right? And with the creative competencies and the reactive behaviors, or that reveals like your inner and your outer game, I would say, about that. But Pulse is what comes after. I remember people saying, "Hey, Carolina, do you want to be my coach? Because I received this assessment, but I don't know what to do with this." It's like, imagine that you receive, like your doctor gives you the results of some test that you did, and you're like, "Hey, but what is the treatment? What I am going to do with this?" And some people came to me as a coach and they say, "Hey, Carolina, I have this assessment, and it says that I have to be more open to feedback, or that I have to be more, that to connect more with my team, but I don't know how." It's very difficult for me to know, because rationally I understand that I need to do that, but I don't know what it needs to be changed inside of me in order to have these behaviors, right? So Pulse is an ongoing leadership development tool from Leadership Circle that measures growth across time rather than offering a single snapshot. So we have the assessment, and people says, "Okay, and now what are we going to do with this?" Right? So what we have created is an instrument that tracks leadership behavior shifts and developmental progress through continuous feedback. It is a 3-phase process. So we do 3 assessments: a baseline, an interim, and final. I'm gonna talk about a little bit more in some minutes about this. And we can spread this in between 6 to 12 months, and it makes a difference. And something that you can expect is the outcome, and it's like a clear insight into how leadership effectiveness change with practice and awareness. So let me share a little bit about this. Something that is important with Pulse is that we're sending let me stop sharing my screen. So you are having a great session of debriefing our tool, Leadership Circle Profile, or Leadership Circle Manager Edition. And then you have a session and you have a conversation around what is the plan here. Of course, people digest and they are like, "Carolina, 18 competencies, 11 reactive tendencies. Where do I start? What I am going to do with this? What is the important thing here?" And something that I want to share with you, let me see, is a journey. Let me bring a journey, an idea of how this works. So, because I was going to explain about the graphic makes a huge difference for you. So here you have a leadership circle profile. Imagine that you start maybe in the company you are working, or maybe this is the first time you know about this leadership development assessment, but you have an assessment that is leadership circle profile, that it always comes with a great and powerful conversation. Actually, we have here practitioners, and practitioners knows that we invest a lot of time in teaching, training you on doing this really important conversation. That is not a coaching session. This is different from a coaching session. It has like an agenda, and the agenda is to is for the client to understand these results and to start that digestion process that is going to continue for some weeks until we have a next session. And this session, we called it the Leadership Development Plan session. If you're a practitioner, in our interpretation manual, we have an example of this. If you're a practitioner, we have in our materials a leadership development plan. But at the end is what I always did after any assessment working with my clients, that is like, okay, let's have a conversation around development. What do you want to work in? What are you listening? Let's imagine that we gather a good amount of people of your life. I love these exercises from Robert Keegan. Robert Keegan is an expert on the stages of development and the author of Immunity to Change, and a beautiful process that I was certified with him. He said, let's imagine we invite a group of people of your life, like a 360. We do an intervention. I think we all know what is an intervention, right? So I invite a group of people of your life, and we ask these people, let me play with you, Sarah. Let's imagine that we're doing this. And I ask these people, if Sarah has to change just one thing that is going to make a difference, that is going to take her to the next level, what do you think Sarah should be working on? And we're going to listen different responses, maybe from your family, some things, maybe from your friends from school and other things, maybe from your colleagues at work, another thing. But I also ask the leader, hey, Sarah, but if you have to change just one thing that is going to unleash your potential, that is going to multiply your impact, what do you think you should be working on? You don't have to answer this here. I'm not going to expose you this way. Phew. But let's imagine that you have to choose just one thing. But this thing is going to make a difference. Like when I play a little bit with my clients on this, they always know what is the one big thing. Because at the end, we always know. We know that if we work on that, it's going to make a difference. So one big thing is something that we like discover in the leadership development plan session. And we also talk about two things that if you read our books, you know what I am talking about. If you spend and invest time on developing one creative competency, one competency that is going to create a long-lasting impact on your teams, on the people you work with, on yourself. If you begin to practice one of these competencies and you stop doing one of the reactive behaviors, then you are going to move the whole result of your leadership circle profile. So what we measure in Pulse is these three things I'm playing here today. One big thing goal, one start behavior, one stop behavior, and that is enough. When people feel overwhelmed with these results, you can have a conversation. Hey, if we just stop looking all of these dimensions, all of this feedback, if we listen all the commentaries you receive in your leadership circle profile, and we put this on a filter, and at the end, the essence is something that you need to change, and it's a one big thing behavior, a one big thing goal, one start behavior, one stop behavior is enough. Is enough to have a 1 year coaching process. Of course, we're going to have a conversations in between all of these months coaching sessions, and maybe we can gather another competencies, another reactive tendencies. But which is super important is that what Pulse measures is that this session of leadership development plan is to do that. And we can do it with a team. We can work with a team. I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but let's talk about individuals. So we do this, but let's imagine that we are doing this with 10 people inside of an organization, a leadership team of an organization. We can have a session when we gather all of this leadership team and we all share what are we going to invest the time. We give each other feedback. And imagine how we are affecting or in a good way the culture of this team and the culture of the organization, because of course leaders shape culture. Right? So when we talk about having this session, we are beginning to create change because people is sharing, we are all in the same page. We're all wanting to change something. And then we begin to do our different polls surveys. And at the end, we can have a team pulse in both of them. Like I can aggregate this by the end. I'm going to share with you the case with one of my clients. We play a lot with this. But we can also imagine that we are having a group session, a team session, and people comes from doing the leadership circle profile, but we're going to have a conversation around them as a team. We can create a one big thing goal. We can create a start behavior of the team and a stop behavior. And we can also measure that in one survey that the whole team is going to respond the 3 times. And we can see at the end how was the performance of this team on that goal. So these are options that we can play with. And something that is super important when you are working and trying to have sustainable change is always to work on a leadership development plan. This document, imagine just a editable PDF document, is something that is a live document that you can revisit, that you can do year by year. You can work on your leadership development plan. And the difference is huge when you have a leadership development plan that when you're just like, I'm going to change because I want to be, for example, in your personal life, I want to be healthier. I can start the year thinking, okay, I'm going to work out, I'm going to eat different, I am going to maybe begin to practice a new sport, I am going to have down times, which is very different from having a structure that sustains this change, right? So something that is important when we're talking about sustainable change is this one big thing goal, the right goal type, the right goal level that is pulsable, what it means to be pulsable. If I have a goal that is just happening in my head, let's imagine that I want to feel less fear in the meetings. People don't know if I am feeling something, so it has to be observable. That's something that we make. So that is super important to use pulse. It has to be observable, and it's identify the best levers for a stop and start focus behavior that is also pulsable. So the behaviors also has to be super observable, right? And let me see if I can explain you what happens in these 3 pulses, because I am going to share with you some examples and things, but I also want to stop to see if there is questions or something that is arising in this moment. I'm just checking our time together because it goes fast. The first pulse is going to be super important because it identifies, we need to identify the one big thing goal, the start and the stop behaviors. And we use an accountability circle of 5 to 8 people. You don't need 20 people. You need people around you. The accountability circle is people around you that is going to be committed to observe you and to give you feedback, not only during the surveys, but also after that meeting. After that conversation, you can ask, hey, please, can you give me feedback? You can find the right moment to tell me if I am practicing what I am committing to, you know? And the other thing is we need to assess the current level of performance in the one big thing. So that's one of the questions. I am going to share an example of this one. And always in the 3 phases, in the baseline, interim, and the final, you are going to have commentary, which is super, super important because at the end we're asking, what do you think this leader should be investing time, right? How is it going with this one big thing goal, right? The second one and the third one, just to summarize, do a comparison with the first one. And the last one, and in the first one, we asked about leadership effectiveness, the same questions we have in leadership circle profile, and we're going to compare this. So I want to share with you what's been the difference for me using Pulse, not personally, I'm gonna share that last, but more with my clients, right? So I have a case here. I work with an institution, a financial institution in Latin America, and we did a case with 78 leaders that all of them at the same time use Pulse. This was an amazing experience of everybody Like imagine a gym of leadership development. Everybody at the gym at the same time, um, practicing something and learning something. We began to create a culture of vulnerability because, of course, feedback in this book that I really recommend. One of the conditions to multiply leadership in an organization, imagine to cascade like leadership in an organization, is to harvest an environment full of feedback. And Pulse is the way to do it. Imagine that everybody in the organization is doing the LCP, the debrief, and the Pulse surveys during a year. And imagine the possibilities of the conversations that happen. Imagine how we normalize change and leadership development when we are doing this. Right. So let me share my screen because I want to share a little bit of my findings. This is not the perfect case because I didn't mean to bring something that is perfect, but is real. I have my project manager is here with me. That is Santiago. He helped me to launch this. This is just one of the phases of with this client because then we launch more. Like at the end, we had like 100 pulses in this organization. But this is the case when we started, and we did a 2 phases engaging 78 leaders with our model, right? So what we did in that time, because this happened last year, and we finished this year. So we started with a leadership circle profile. We did our debrief. We did our session of leadership development plan. And we launched Pulse in that moment. We launched it a little later because the company was in the middle of this negotiation with us. And they were like, oh, I don't know if I want to do it. I don't know. And finally they were like, okay, let's give it a try to Pulse. So we did it almost like the same month that we did our first coaching session. In the middle of this, we did something that is a triad session, something that I called a triad session. In this process that we had it later, but it was amazing. But if I can recommend you, that's the reason I wanted to share this now. If you can do it before launching the Pulse survey, that's even better. So you invite triad session is because you have a third party participating in this conversation. I usually love to have the boss there because we are responsible. The system is responsible for development. It's not only like you are our employee and you take a look in the way how you're going to develop yourself. Is the responsibility of the system, is the responsibility of the boss as well. So in that conversation, we create connection, we create accountability, and we ask the leader, hey, the success of both of you is going to create the results that you both want. What do you need from each other? How you can create a diet or a system that really is going to sustain change for the leader, but also for the leader we are working with, but also for the boss. So that conversation for me is one of my favorites. When we ask after all of this process to the company, what did you like the most of the whole process? Of course, they like Pulse, they like the LCP, but they adore the triad session. And they said, I would hire you just to come to do this every year with us, because those conversations were conversations we have never had. This is not a performance conversation. This is a leadership development conversation with a third person that is there supporting the connection and how they are both accountable for the culture of the company. So that's my favorite session, as you can see in my and you can listen in the passion of my voice. And the other thing is that we were doing the coaching process because this was a huge commitment. They did 4 coaching sessions, and in the middle of these sessions, we did a Pulse survey. And for example, in this coaching session number 2, we debriefed this and we realign. Hey, how is it going with one big thing? How is it going with the start behavior? How is it going with the stop behavior? Let's take a look on the commentary. And at the end, this became really a tracking process that sustained change with these leaders. One of my clients, because I participate, we had 11 coaches working with us, not only in this phase, but in the others. And when I was working with 10 leaders, and I remember one of them, I asked her, okay, we're closing this process. What are you learning? And she said, I know I could change my one big thing if I wanted, but I know that rationally, but I know for sure that the only way to change my behaviors and to work on me and my one big thing is having this process. I would never change that behavior without all of this support. Not only the support of the pulse survey, the support of my system, the support of my leader, the support of the culture that was like in a certain way, like pushing me to also do the change that really lasts. So that was my experience. So it was a success story because we did 500 coaching hours in this organization and all of these sessions that I shared with you. The final pulse reports, I told you we can gather the information at the end, and we had a great way to close this process with this phase with this company, because they could see, for example, this is a graphic that shows us. One big thing is the blue line, right? So how many no change? 1% of people. The others somewhat improve and much improve. 58 and 41, which is huge, right? Imagine that these people didn't have these behaviors in a certain way consolidated when we started the process. Then the star behavior, that is the green line, only 5% no change, which is, of course, a possibility, because sometimes when we see these instruments, we imagine that never we're going to have something like here, somewhat worse or much worse, but we're humans. Things can happen and people can be like, change is messy, and we're gonna see that when we're working with this instrument as well, and we need to be open. That is not our responsibility, because sometimes when we use pulse, we want always to have the improvement because that proves that our coaching is good, which is not true. And the other thing is the stop behavior. Imagine the stop is the hardest. Why? This is in the reactive tendencies. This is something that has been like part of my identity in a certain way. So a stop behavior can be harder to change. But in this case, 72% somewhat improve and much improve 19%, right? Which is great. Imagine just having the conversation with an organization working on this. And here we're like measuring frequency. So the star behavior, imagine that the star behavior by the beginning, in this company, it wasn't that low. I'm going to show you like the path, but in the majority of the companies, maybe in sometimes and seldom, an increasing frequency is super hard. One thing is that if I know that I need to change something, and something different is if I need to consolidate a behavior and that the frequency has to be observable, which is very hard to achieve this, and the stop doing behavior should decrease. So when we saw the 78 leaders, this was the final, but when we go to the teams, we had different frequencies and it looks like a line. So you can say, hey, they didn't change. But what we're showing here is that the different teams had we can do pictures of different teams with Pulse as well, which is super interesting because we can have conversations with those leaders and those leaders can keep supporting change.
Carolina, if I can interrupt just real quick. There was a question in the chat asking you to elaborate on the internal system support. So you were mentioning that when you were giving an example of the woman saying, I wouldn't have made a change if I didn't have this internal support. Can you say more about that?
Yes, of course. So internal system support, when we are talking about this, we're talking about the accountability circle. And what we're thinking is, imagine that we said to our client, you're going to have a little 360. These people is going to be supporting your growth because they are going to be giving you feedback. These people, part of the organization, of course. And having this system, we call it the accountability circle. And we even bring to the practitioners, we have many documents to make the commitment with this accountability circle so they can have at the end this 360 that is going to be bringing this feedback. But also, we can also do, let me go back here, sessions. Not only like the one that I explained you here, sorry. This we can have group sessions with them. And when I am talking about the internal support, I'm talking that in between them, you can do even peer coaching or like a peer that is going to be supporting each other. So I'm aware of the time, but let me finish with this because I can talk forever of this. So at the end, we did again the leadership circle profile, and this is the improvement that we saw in some creative competencies of this group of people. So purposeful and visionary, there is growth, sustainable productivity, and personal learner. And we found decrease on pleasing, belonging, conservative, and driven, which is a lot, right? Let me just stop sharing and tell my own experience because, of course, in these 5 minutes before questions and answers, I just want to share a little bit about my journey. So I did a leadership circle profile this year. This is my fourth one. And I don't have any problem. If you know me, of course, not many people know me, but if you know me, you know I am a very open person with everything. This was my leadership circle profile. So great results, high cost, driven, passionate, and all of this. I score myself really hard here. But the biggest challenge is here, balance. Balance was, and all the commentaries, like I have here my commentaries, but it was like, can you please rest? Can you please stop? I'm worried about you. Can you please stop? So I was like, okay, I'm going to do my work. And I am going to do the work with all my team. So all my team of the regions that I manage in Leadership Circle did a retake. All of them did a leadership development plan, and all of them are doing Pulse. So we're just launching our second one, but let me share my first Pulse. This is my first Pulse. And here is my one big thing. It's in 2 languages because I work in different languages, but here is, as a leader, Carolina slows down to reflect and renew in order to gain new perspectives with more curiosity, flexibility, and empathy. My goodness, not easy. I'm a machine, as you can notice. I just go fast in life. And I was like, okay, I'm going to slow down. I cannot tell you the big amount of commitment, therapy, coaching, meditation, working with my team, my accountability circle, me asking questions because I am super committed. I really believe on this. And I asked, this is my baseline. Okay, how I am doing before starting all of this. This was at the beginning of the year. Carolina pauses to find emotional flow with leadership circle system during times of uncertainty and disruption, because I get crazy when it's not super certain, and the reality is that the world is a little bit crazy. So I was very unsettled a lot of the time. And the stop doing, Carolina overloads herself and stresses the system when she feels something important is at stake. Mm-hmm. As you can see, I went for all. I was exposing myself, sending this to people, and I am exposing myself today as well, because I really believe that growth happens with vulnerability. So the third question is like, please provide feedback relevant to pursuit of this leader's goal, right? So you have the things here in Spanish, but I have seen you slow down. There is much you are very passionate about, and I watch you worth the tension of this energy. I wonder if reframing from this is a fight to power to redirect others think it might help. I do recognize the system has much maturity to continue to develop. So what has happened is that let me stop sharing this one. I had a session with my whole team. I share my LCP. We all talk about our leadership development plan. We all talk about our start-stop behaviors. And it's been great. It's been 6 months. We're launching the second one. I still have my passion. I'm still a very intense person. But yesterday, I just want to close saying this in our leadership team session, and our leadership team in Leadership Circle is doing the same. Somebody raised her hand. She raised her hand and she said, I see you so grounded. What has been changing on you in this last year? And I couldn't believe that I was receiving this feedback in this session. I was just presenting the strategy for next year for all my regions. And I believe I am I am a believer because I'm using this on myself. So this is everything I wanted to share. I can talk for hours. I do this certification in my region, so I'm very passionate, but I want to see if somebody has something that they want to ask or to share.
Thank you, Carolina, so much. This is so interesting to hear, and I'm so grateful. I know I don't know if you noticed, but there were a lot of hearts and thumbs up when you were sharing your own journey. So I know all of us appreciate you being so vulnerable and sharing and giving us insight in a real practical example. There have been a couple questions that have come through, but I want to stress, if you have a question pop up, please put it in the chat. So the first one, Carolina, is this. Do you need a coach to go through Pulse to develop a leadership development plan?
It's better to have a coach, but let's imagine that you don't have a coach. For example, I don't have a coach for my whole team. What we are doing is, of course, we use a coach to do a debrief and to do a leadership development plan, because it's better to have somebody that really helps you to navigate the possibilities of your development. But the one-on-one, the peer coaching is what I am applying to my team, and they are receiving the results, and at the end they are doing this. What is my preference? Please do coaching. I am a coach. I believe in coaching. Coaches are great, and use always coaches that really loves leadership development, because there is a different brand. Like, yes, it's different to do a leadership development coaching that is just doing a life coaching or just an executive coaching. We are very proud to be experts on leadership development. That's the reason we want to invite. If you have in your company the possibility to do this, raise your hand. We're here. We want to support you to do that. Yeah.
Excellent. This one just popped up in the chat from Olga asking, what resistance do clients have to using Pulse? Or what have you seen where clients resist doing something like this, and how do you manage that?
Yeah, I think some people is scared of who's going to see my results, and I think clarity, Brené Brown says, clarity is kindness. Of course, leadership circle profile is something that the leader should receive as well as Pulse. We encourage the leader to share results the way I'm sharing, and I believe we should share our results. And if the company is like asking the leaders to share the results of Pulse, the leader should agree at the beginning, I want to share the results of my Pulse. But it has to come from really like you have to be convinced in order to share that. In general, I haven't found resistance to Pulse. It seems like, okay, now we have something that is measurable and is practical and is personal. That is the promise of our webinar today. So I believe that's what makes the difference. Yeah.
I love that. Another question that came in was, how do you measure things that don't show up so easily on a dashboard? Things like trust or courage. How does that work, even between sessions or through the Pulse survey?
Yeah, through a Pulse survey, there is a behavior that is like the consequence of trust. For example, I am going to begin to share the difficulties I'm finding as a leader with my team. Is a way that we are like experimenting with trust. That's something that we can do. For example, so we need to find the behavior that is the consequence of those very deep concepts you're bringing, right? At the end, it is something that looks like this. For example, I am, as a leader, Carolina is approachable. Let's imagine that that's my challenge. It's very simple, but it might be very difficult for a person that is distant, that is shy, that is like very much introvert, but it wants to be approachable. It can be a sentence, but it could be huge for somebody, right? So super important to define a goal that is really the consequence of something very important for the leader that requires leadership development, or kind of shift in this, almost in the stage of development, because we are supporting change with that. Yeah.
Well, that's great. I appreciate that. Here's one that's maybe a little more about your personal journey than the team journey. But what was maybe one sort of low lift, high impact action that helped you get things going and making change?
Yeah. I believe in my case, sharing and just putting something that it doesn't sound like super nice. Because when somebody was reading my Pulse, one big thing is start the stop is like, hey, Carolina, sometimes stress the systems. Carolina sometimes goes too fast, and I was exposing myself and I was like owning my truth. And we did a webinar on courageous authenticity last week, and I was talking that for me, that's all. When I can live with my truth, with courageous authenticity, I believe change requires courageous authenticity. And that's the reason I think that made a huge difference. I didn't put something that sound nice. I was very intentional to expose myself because I really want to change this. And this year, I've been doing everything because I'm committed to slow down, not to slow down here in the conversation, but it's slowing down in my life. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Here's another one. How are the stop and start behaviors linked to business outcomes or a company's priorities or a team's priorities?
Yeah. So something that I have also done is to create another goal during the leadership development plan session that connects the one big thing with the organizational goal. And the organizational goal, we measure this in our conversations and we bring this, hey, how this behavior is supporting this organizational goal. That is one way. But at the end, I believe, because we have wrote so much about how leadership behavior really is connected to business performance. There is so much data and research that I believe that any leadership behavior that we develop is going to support business performance based on all of this research that we have done. Yeah.
One other question that's come in is about the size of teams that this works for. In your example, you mentioned multiple. I think it was 78 different leaders who are part of the team. If does this work for a team of 4 people as well, or how do you?
Yes, it can also work for an individual. Imagine that you're just working with one executive. Please use Pulse. You don't need to have 100, right? So 1 is amazing. 100 is great. 1,000 is great as well. I just wanna. Santiago, are you there? I just want to invite Santiago just for 1 minute. Santiago was the one who helped me to launch all of these pulses. Santi, welcome. We cannot see you, but yeah. If we can ask you, what do you think was the biggest learning from doing all of this with us?
Well, I would say that for me, Pulse is a powerful tool because it showed us like a real story. It was like a storytelling. We had like a start, we saw that start, then we were able to observe the leadership progress all along the way, and we finished with a clear final result. I think that it gave us visibility and also to the company as well. And it was amazing to have these leaders, and we are working with 100 leaders soon too. So yeah, we have this wonderful tool
to project with 100. Yeah. That soon. Yeah. Thank you, Santi. Thank you for being here.
Well, actually, I think that's probably a good note for us to end on. We're at 3 minutes to the top of the hour. So I just want to say, wow, thank you, Carolina, for such a great conversation and a thorough explanation of Pulse and the Leadership Development Plan and how we can really work a system to create lasting, sustainable, practical, measurable change. If you listening would like to explore ways to make the leadership change that you're implementing practical and measurable in your own practice or with your clients, please let us know. You can type yes in the chat and we'll follow up with you directly, or visit our contact page on the website and reach out when you're ready. In the meantime, we can tell you that we don't have a webinar coming up in December, but we do have one in January. And that's going to be a Leadership Circle principal, Betsy Leatherman, talking about in the world of AI, making human connection really matter and why it really matters. So do please watch your inbox and Leadership Circle social channels for details on that event coming up. Just a note, as soon as I'm finished talking, we will close out this room. So again, before we leave, I just want to say thank you so much for coming. On behalf of Leadership Circle and our featured guest today, Carolina Páez, my name is Sarah Stahl, and I'm saying so much thank you for your time and your attention today. Take care, and we will see you next time.
Goodbye. Thank you, everybody. Take care.